There we go. All right. When you set up your process book, master pages are going to save your life. And I know we've reviewed this. Plus, when you set up your book, it's really important that you work with a grid because it creates order and organization. So right now I'm going to set things up in inches, not in picas. And I'm going to create a document, and let's just start with a 16-page book. And David said his book is going to be an 8.5 by 11 page folded in half, which makes it a letter size page that would be wide, so 11 wide, folded in half. They actually have half pages here in InDesign, 5.5, 8.5. The only problem with this is it doesn't account for a bleed if you print it on an 8.5 by 11 document. So in order to account for bleed, I suggest you make your pages, let's say 5 inches. So you've got a lot of bleed. By 8 inches tall, you have a lot of bleed. The other thing is when I set up my documents, you always want to select more options. You always want to make sure you're again accounting for bleed, which should be 1/8 of an inch. In addition, I rarely use default margins. I generally use 5/8 of an inch, and I break my chain link, and I usually leave about 3/4 of an inch from the bottom of the page. The other thing is if you start by setting up a document with column guides and a specific gutter, you'll create, let's say, a 2-column layout, for example. And right here I'm going to create a gutter that is a little more than, or I think this is 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to set up my document as facing pages because you're going to take that 8.5 by 11 page that gets printed, fold it in half, and that's what's going to generate your booklet. This won't be a very large book. And right now, if we look at my pages here, we've got a 16-page document. It always starts with a right-hand page. This would not necessarily include our cover. This would be text weight, but I've created a document that has a grid. And when you create master pages right here, to activate your master pages, you could put text boxes on them. I actually think this gutter looks pretty large for this small page. So what I might choose to do is go back to my document setup. And actually I can't because what's done is done here. I would have to go to my master page, which is labeled master page A, hold my shift key down, activate my 2 master pages, go to layout, margins and columns, and I'm going to reduce my margins because my book size is so small. A 5.5, 8.5 book or a 5 by 8 book is pretty small, so I'm going to make my margins smaller to a 1/2 inch. There we go. And because it's a spread, they refer to this margin as your inside margin and that one as your outside margin. So this is pretty standard, nothing very fancy. Now, what you can do in order to create automatic numbering, you create a type box down here, and you can do automatic numbering any way you wish to do it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a number, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, you can spell it out in words or whatever you'd like. To do automatic numbering, though, I can insert special character in this box. I'm on the master pages, notice. I go to insert special character, markers, current page number, and it puts an A in here. And I am going to align that with my margin guide. I'm going to go to my paragraph styles with this. I'm going to make it flush right in the box so it aligns with the margin and not use default 12-point type, but maybe make it something smaller like 8-point type, and maybe I'll do the type impact so it shows up so you can see it. And instead of just putting the page number, maybe I write the word page in front of it and a space. And then I'm going to reduce the size of my page right here. Now you can't see this because of this little recording here. And I'm going to use my selection tool, my option key, drag this over to align with this margin right here. And instead of my text being flush right, I'm going to make it flush left in that box. And now I've got master page items. So, generally when you're creating a book, a chapter starts on a right-hand page, and maybe right here I can create a text box and call this chapter 1. And again, maybe I'm going to use impact, and I'm going to make this 60 points in type. Yes, John?
What if we have a long preface and we want to start, say, on page 6, start our numbering?
It's a really excellent question that I'm not going to answer in 7 minutes. I'm going to make this flush right, and I'm going to just create some kind of style here where this is my chapter header. And then let's say I know that for all my chapter headers, I'm going to start always my first chapter header with my text on the right side of the chapter. I only want it in one column. I can fill it with placeholder text right now, and I can start to set up my, let me go to my typography panel. I can start to set up my style sheets, for example. So I've selected all my text. Let's say I want all my text to be Adobe Caslon Pro, and I want my text to be 9-point type on 16-point leading. I want my paragraphs to have space before of 1/8 of an inch, or let's make it space before nothing, and let's make space after 1/8 of an inch. Then I go to my paragraph style sheet panel. I create new paragraph style. I'm going to call it body copy, and I can use a smart key of Command 1 on my keypad, and notice it picked up everything I specified out loud, except I'm changing my kerning to optical. So for example, right now I can select all of this, hold my Option key down, notice it has a little plus sign next to paragraph, basic paragraph. I'm going to select body, and now I've got paragraph style sheets selected for my body copy. I can click right here. I can go to new paragraph style. I can call this chapter number. I don't need a smart key because I'm not going to use it very much. Notice what it did. It picked up all of my specs for my chapter number. Say OK. And then, for example, maybe on all of my, across from my chapter pages, I want to have a photograph that bleeds from here. This is actually what Marisol did, across my gutter to here, right? And I'm going to take it all the way to this column, make sure I don't have a black stroke on it. I'm going to go to Object Arrange, and I'm going to send it to the back. And I'm going to do another thing, which is take my chapter text right here. I'm going to go to my Effects panel because I know what I'm going to want this to do and how I want it to behave. And I'm going to select Chapter Effects Multiply. And what's going to happen here is now all of these master page A's, no matter what page I'm on, has this master page applied to it. In order to create a second set of master pages, I go to New Master Page. I'm going to call these Content Pages. And on my master page B, I'm going to make my life much easier. Right now, I'm going to select my page numbers, and I'm going to select this column of text right here. I'm going to deselect that photo, and I'm going to copy it, those 3 elements, go to Content Page B, and I'm going to go to Edit, Paste, and Place, and notice that my graphic's set up here. Now let's say I want all my text boxes to flow into one another. I can create text boxes by holding my Option key down and my Shift key, and I can drag them so my page B has 4 sets of text boxes. But I want my text boxes to flow, so I'm selecting all my text in each of these individual boxes, and I deleted it. And I'm going to click right here to that little outflow area and click on it, and notice I get a chain link with my text tool, and if I click on this box, it flows into it. If I click on this corner, I'm telling it to flow out and flow into that one, and if it flows out of that one, I'm going to tell it to flow into that one by clicking on these little inflow boxes and little outflow boxes. And then I can drag these master page B pages down here, And you'll notice now if I go to page 1, I've got my chapter intro. If I go to page B, I've got my text boxes all set up. If I go right here to master page A, I've got photos. But maybe what I want is another master page. I have 1 more minute to do this. I better show you an example. So for example, I can go to master page A down here, and maybe this is chapter 2. So I hold my shift key, my command key, and I release this. And now I don't have to retype or reposition anything. I can type 2. And now I can go to number 9. I can hold my command, my shift, and 3. And the advantage of doing this, let me show you here, let me release this photograph page across from 3. With it active, I'm going to Command D, File, Place. And because Eleanor was so gracious, she's letting me place her texture right in here. So, I thought I had that active, and I didn't. Let me do that again. Let me go to right here, this box, this graphic box, and I'm going to go to File, Place. I'm going to take Eleanor's texture. I'm going to place it into that box, and I'm going to go to Object Fitting, and I'm going to fill the frame proportionally in that box. And remember when I told you I made that effects multiply as a layer option? See how it shows through with opacity and multiplies onto this texture. And if I view this page, let me reduce it so you can see it. My chapter header looks like that. It's kind of pretty, right? Thanks to Eleanor's texture. And then all I have to do now is release this text box, and I can fill it with new text. But I've got my master layout ready to roll. And if I come right here to this text box, and I select all, and I delete it, and I type in new text, and I'll just fill with placeholder text, watch how it flows to all 4 pages, because I created flow on my master pages, right? Plus, if I select all this text, because I applied paragraph style sheets to the text that was in there, it picked it up. And right now, for example, if I click off of it and I go to paragraph style sheets and I decide I want all my text in my whole book to become blue text or red text, I can change it on my paragraph style sheet, and it changes universally because I applied my paragraph style sheet. So David, this conversation came about because creating a grid layout creates order to a page. So what you start to do is think through your margins, where you want your text placed, and what graphics you might want. And because I have a grid here, I can choose to place images in my grid like this, where I create 4 of those, or I can create this right here, delete this one, and just because I have a grid here doesn't mean that this photo can't fill with, let me change that for a second, that these photos all have to be exactly the same size. These photos can all fill with color like that. And now you look at these page layouts, and I created order really fast, right? Because I worked with a grid, and I worked with master pages, and I worked with paragraph style sheets. So I took more than 7 minutes. It was 9, but now we're done. Oh, it was 13 according to this.
Thank you.
Any questions? John's going to post